Okay, so today is June 30th, 2022. I am Sebastiano Cocco with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. Today I am at the Chappie James Museum in Pensacola, and I'm here with, if you could introduce yourself.
Ramon Rios.
Ramon Rios, okay. And this is, we always have a giggle of this some days, but if you'd like to say when and where you were born.
Oh, I was born on January 7th, 1957.
Okay, and were you born in Pensacola?
No, I was born in Princeton, Florida, just south of Homestead.
Oh, wow. So I didn't know there was anything south of Homestead.
Well, you got Homestead, then you got the Keys and all that stuff. So I was born in Princeton.
Oh, okay. Is Princeton part of the Keys already?
No,
or is
it's still up in the meaty part of Florida.
Oh, okay.
But I left there almost immediately after I was born. Mm-hmm. So I was raised in Texas. And then my dad was in the Air Force.
Okay.
So we lived all over the country, and we lived in Germany and Spain for my high school years.
Germany and Spain for high school years. Mm-hmm. Wow. And so where in Texas, if you don't mind?
Mostly South Texas, a place called Raymondville, Texas.
That's
where
almost
I have my
too
name.
perfect. Wow. And so those are, I guess, basically all of childhood up until even through adolescence, basically, right?
Right.
Or I guess early, what's that called, like the tween, it's like 12th birthday,
right,
and then for like 13, 14, you went to Europe?
Yes.
Okay.
And I spent about 5 years there in total. We were in Germany, Wiesbaden, Germany for 1 year, and then he got transferred to Madrid, Spain for the rest of his tour.
Okay. There's a place called Rota, Spain, or something like that.
Yeah.
Rota. Was that it, or is that somewhere else?
Yeah, no, it wasn't it. I was at the Torrejon Air Force Base.
Okay.
But we used to go down to Rota to play them in football and all, because we had a regular high school.
Wow.
And soccer and basketball, all that stuff. And then we'd also go to Zaragoza. Mm-hmm. They had another school there.
And so, how did that work with the? Were you like in school with just other military kids, or was it?
We were in school with mostly military kids, but there was missionaries, their kids, and executives for large companies. They would send their kids there.
Okay. So
and the government would allow them to do it because it was a Department of Defense school.
Mm-hmm. Quite interesting.
So we had a mixture, and some of the schools had dorms. Mm-hmm. So their parents got stationed in some remote place, and they basically lived there while they were in high school.
And I wonder, so to go back to the Texas time, just in case, just to get like maybe like a comparison, what was school there like? Were you attending perhaps like elementary school?
No, I just did most of my high school years were in Spain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, actually, all of my high school years were in Spain.
Okay.
But so it was just a high school experience when I lived there. Mm-hmm. The difference between school here and over there is we had a sense of camaraderie because we weren't Spanish, we weren't German. We were just some Americans that got sent there. So we stuck together more than probably a normal stateside school would do. We bonded together purely because we were strangers in a country that we hadn't been in.
Wow. And so much different than Raymondville, Texas?
Yes. It was more open. Raymondville, Texas had a very conservative education program, and they were real strict with everything, and it was more like classic learning. When I went to Spain, it was a lot looser. They had a comic book class you could take, and just weird stuff like that. Plus, we were in a foreign country, so they would interject that kind of stuff into the education program.
Yeah.
And I don't think stateside schools do that.
I wonder, did you have to do it in multiple languages?
No, everybody there spoke English, and most of them spoke Spanish anyway, especially the missionary kids and the ones that came from executives that were there that just happened to be there. Their dad was transferred over there, and now they're going to school there.
Did y'all end up learning Spanish anyways over there?
Yeah, I know how to speak Spanish because I'm Mexican, and growing up, that's all we spoke. But it's a different Spanish over there than what it is in Mexico or South Texas. So it wasn't a big deal though. I could manage. We would go out and I'd talk to people. And
what about some of your friends though? Maybe if they didn't grow up with it.
Yeah, some of the friends they did do that. The ones that actually ventured out of the regular base housing, military housing, are the ones that got the most out of that experience.
Right.
And they're the ones that were trying to learn Spanish. And they were the ones enrolling in Spanish classes in high school because they were into the whole culture. So that had an effect on them.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it's quite the place to be in Madrid.
Oh, it is. It's fun.
Were you far from the city?
No, we were. They had the base in a like kind of remote area, but then the school was. Well, the school was on the base, but we lived about 25 miles away. And that's where the housing was. So, it was a ride we'd get. The big buses, like tour buses for bands and stuff like that. That was our school bus. So they'd pick us up, take us to school in Torrejon on the base, and then we'd go back. But where we lived was like right on the outskirts of Madrid. So the thing that we learned when I was there, and I was there in the 70s, is that the transportation, public transportation, was excellent.
So, sorry, the transportation was what?
It was excellent.
Oh, it was excellent.
Yeah.
Right.
So we would take a bus from where we lived to the first subway station. Then we get on the subway, and we were middle of town, everywhere.
Well, so you think you felt connected to being there, the city and whatnot? You feel like you could go around.
And again, it was the people that ventured out.
Right.
Those are the ones even now have a strong connection with it. And they also they're all over the place. All over the United States. We have some that live in Rome and actually Spain. But we have reunions every 3 years. And we invite everybody that ever went to the school. So now the earlier classes that we met the first time we had a reunion are less and less each time because they're dying off. And but that's the bond. Everybody goes there and we act like we're 16 again, and then we go back home and act like an adult.
And so you meet over there back in Europe?
We've tried that, but there wasn't many people that had the money to go back there.
Of course.
So we go from the East Coast. We've had them in Florida, Texas, Denver, and California.
Yeah.
So we just move them around.
I'd imagine most people came back stateside at some point.
Yeah, everybody did.
Yeah.
And their experience with American schools was completely different, and they always talk about that, that they wish they would have stayed in Spain.
I guess, because you were done with, you're done with high school while you were over there, right? And so I guess once you came here, there's no...
Yeah, I didn't...
There's just college.
Right. I didn't experience any of that stuff that they did.
For some... Okay. Yeah. And how do you... I wonder, how did you feel about college then at that point, like graduating with like in Spain, but at the same time you're obviously speaking in English?
It was an interesting experience. My issue with college was that I would get interested in every class that I took, and I would kind of venture off every now and then, and then come back to what my degree was in. And I got a degree in communications. The emphasis was public relations.
Where did you attend?
University of West Florida.
University of West Florida, okay. That's quite cool. And so I'd imagine like Pensacola being Navy, was it just kind of like, okay, first year parents was stationed there,
Well,
and then they got here, or?
No, between high school and going to college, I spent 9 years in the Navy.
Oh, so you
As
went
a-
to the military?
Yeah. I was in the military, and I spent 9 years in. I got out and tested to be an FAA air traffic controller because that's what I did in the Navy. And it was when Reagan fired, I don't know if you go back that far, but when Reagan fired the controllers, do you?
I wasn't. I don't know
Okay.
that piece of history, but you can tell me for the record.
Oh, they strike. They had a union and they went on strike. So instead of negotiating with them, President Reagan just said, "Okay, you're fired." And there was a strong need for air traffic controllers in the FAA. So what they did, the FAA, they started going to military facilities that had controllers, and they were kind of picking the best ones to go work for them. And they did that. You know, they were getting paid for the Navy and all that stuff, but they were working as a civilian.
So the people that were fired, were they, quote unquote, were those spots like easily filled then at that point, or was it?
Was it what now?
Like those people that were fired, were they able to just get new people into those same jobs?
Yeah, military
Okay.
people.
Military people.
That's how they augmented the FAA at that point. And
This
then
is
slowly they built back up
Yeah.
with civilian controllers.
I'd imagine this is what, the mid '80s, maybe.
No, it was the mid '80s. That's when it happened. And
Wow. Okay. So that's quite interesting. And so then you're in the Navy, and
I was in the Navy then. My wife was in the Navy also, so she stayed in. I got out. We were stationed in Milton, which is about 12 miles away, and that's when I went to UWF and started school.
how did you? So I guess you said, well, Air Force and Navy are like fairly like they work together for a bit, to my understanding, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, it'd be kind of odd for me to think, but were there any recruiters in your high school that would they say like, hey, once you're coming back to the States, like?
Oh yeah, they had a ROTC program there, and there was a lot of people that were into it. And it was an Air Force ROTC because we were Air Force, but a lot of them did do that. They went into the military right off the bat.
And so you took a little bit to adjust once you came back to the States?
I did. When I came back to the States, I never watched television when I lived in Europe because it was always a Spanish channel or a German channel.
Right.
And I just didn't like the programs. So I spent 5 years without a TV. And when I came back, it was like, man, you know, they're showing feminine hygiene commercials, and I had never seen them, you know. And, you know, there were little things that we were into as high school kids with clothing and all that stuff.
Right.
When we came back, it was different. They were dressing different. We were like behind the times. And then when we came over, so that was a big shock. A telephone was a big shock. What else was it? Oh, dating. Because kids grow up in the States, they get a car when they're 16, you know, they get their license.
Right.
And they're able to go on dates wherever they want to go. They just run, you know, and we never did that because we didn't have a need for it. We had so much transportation publicly that was cheap that we never bought cars. We never had driver's licenses.
Of course.
I was 25 when I got my driver's license, and usually people get them at 16. But there was a lot of differences. There was definitely a lot of differences.
And so, the license, was that before, after, or during you were in the Navy?
That was during.
During. And so I guess I wonder how did the process begin? Where it's like, where did you? I don't know if it matters like which office you go to, but people usually speak of like my boot camp experience and how that was.
Right.
So
I went to Orlando.
Orlando.
Yep. And I went to Orlando because that was the only co-ed boot camp.
Okay.
So I wanted to be around women.
Could you choose? You had the choice to between that
you
and
could.
some other
I had the
place?
choice between Chicago and Orlando. So I went to Orlando.
And I wonder, like before this, did you have to take the ASVAB test
Yes.
or any? Yeah.
And that's what got me into the air traffic control rating. The most difficult program at the time to get into was to be a submariner, because you had to be real smart apparently to do that. The second one was air traffic controller, and they told me when I signed up for it that the dropout rate was, or the failing rate was like 75% at the time.
Wow. How did that make you feel?
It made me feel very proud when I got out of there. But
Did they tell you beforehand or afterwards?
they told me that beforehand.
Yeah.
So I was expecting something. And the thing is that some of the career fields that people go into, they do everything while they're there at the school, but they don't have any homework to do. And we had a bunch of homework to do, a lot of reading, and then having to apply what we read and all that stuff. So, and we used to have airplanes on a string with a stick, and then our classmates would walk like this to pretend that it's moving, that the airplane is moving. Nowadays, they have a visual thing around you. They have a little tower even that you go into, and it's just all around you, so you can see the airplanes flying, and they do what you tell them to do and all that stuff. So
quite the exercise.
yeah.
And so did you go the enlisted route, or could you already be an
No,
officer?
I was enlisted.
You had to be enlisted?
Yeah, you had to be. I mean, that was the only way to get into that field. But we worked with pilots. That's all we did, and there I went to a training base for my first duty station.
Yeah.
And at the time it was the busiest land station they had for the Navy, and it was in Kingsville, Texas. So I left Texas to see the world, and they sent me to Kingsville. And
is that in the same region, more or less? Wow. And so, quite the pressure for your first duty station.
And it was hard. It wasn't an easy thing to do. And then eventually, with practice, I got the swing of it. I had the personality for it, and I loved going there, and I loved it to be real busy. So I had a good time.
And in terms of the MOS, I believe is the shorthand for it.
Yeah.
Did you have that too in the Navy?
It was called a rate, like rating.
Yeah.
That's what we called it. MOS is for like the
Occupational
Marines and
and
I think the Army uses that term.
and so
also.
you were able to graduate with the air traffic controller program, and so
Correct.
And so did that mean, okay, now you have a job and this is what you do? Is that kind of how they go about it?
Correct.
And at that point, you couldn't really choose which base to go to, or
A lot of people, even after they graduated from the school and started working the real tower, they couldn't get qualified, so they would choose another. The Navy would offer them another rate, or if they got too emotionally involved with it, where they were scared of it, they let them out too. But I mean, that's how they did it. So you could choose to go to another rating, but most people stayed. And at the time, they were giving us $45,000 to re-enlist. So that was an incentive also.
So how many years after the initial classes did you move to Texas?
It was immediate.
Immediately? So the program is maybe, 6 months to a year?
It was about 6 months.
6 months?
And then you graduate, and then the FAA sends you a card that says you're an air traffic controller, and that'll buy you nothing. So, I went there, and we started working, and I flourished. I loved the job.
How many years were you stationed there?
I was stationed there for about 4 years, and then we went to Puerto Rico, and I worked there, and then that's when I got out. I separated from the Navy in Puerto Rico.
Where is that base at?
It was in Ceiba, Puerto Rico.
Seba.
It was called Roosevelt Roads, NAS Roosevelt Roads, Naval Air Station.
Going from the busiest to
To a very slow one.
very slow one.
Yeah. When I got there, people were just sitting around basically, and then the radar shack was across the runways, and it was a trailer, and they had chickens and tomatoes growing. I mean, that's what they did. And then we'd call them and say, "There's an aircraft coming in." They'd go in there and control it. It was very. Do you know what McHale's Navy is?
No.
Okay, it's a show that they had years ago, and that was basically what I went to.
How do you spell it? So I get it from
MCLSE, I think so.
MCL.
No, MCLASE.
Oh,
No.
MC. What am I doing? MCLAES.
ES.
Okay, now we got it extra right. Interesting. I'll have to look that up just for reference.
Okay.
And so, you said you met your wife during your Navy years?
Yeah, I met her in Kingsville, and she was an air traffic controller also, and I was her boss actually when she first got there. So.
And then you were both able to get stationed in Puerto Rico at that point?
And then the controller era that I told you about, where Reagan fired all those people, started filling up again. So I wanted to get into the FAA, and they told me I was too old. I was 31, and they said no, I didn't meet the standards. So.
Was that in terms of you being one of the military people that we used to fill up those jobs, or was that even from the civilian perspective?
It's from the civilian perspective. They had their own rules. They did some sort of study. This is what I've heard about it. I never read about it. But they did studies on controllers, and they found that after 31, they're less trainable than they are when they're younger. And air traffic control is all training. So you can get qualified in one place, and then you move to another place, you have to get requalified. So you start from the very bottom again and work your way up.
Wow. So what did that, so after you were exiting the Navy, like, what did you think then? You're like, well, I can do this, what else?
Well, I chose to go to college, and that's what I did. When I got back here, or she got stationed here, I went to UWF, and that's where I finished the school.
Okay. And so communication was, I imagine you, certainly some kind of communications to be an air traffic controller, but how did that translate into then your coursework and major, etc.?
The biggest translation into that was studying.
Studying.
I was used to studying because we had to do it all the time, even when you got out of school. And so that helped me when I was in college. And that's about the only thing. It didn't have anything to do with moving people around and putting them in spaces. It was all just studying.
It's just I guess the work ethic basically, right? Really helps. Interesting. And so we were talking earlier, you're familiar with Sir Chappie James. And so would you like to speak on that? How did you first?
Sure. I loved jets when I was a kid, and that's all I wanted to do. I made models and blew them up to make them look like they had crashed, and all that kid stuff. But I've always been interested in aviation. I knew about him through getting in the military. I knew about him. There's a series on the Learning Channel or something, and it's about aces, fighter pilot aces. And I bought it because I'm interested in all that stuff. And I saw him in that video when they did that famous mission in Vietnam, where the guy named, there was a colonel that was leading it, Chappie James was second in command, and they went up there and pretended to be other airplanes to draw out the MiGs, and they shot 7 of them down. And that was the largest one-day total in the war. So I was very interested in that.
So it was already known, even like during like your high school years, even.
Mm-hmm. He died when I was in high school, so.
So you never got.
And it was Air Force, so everybody had memorial services where we lived and all that stuff. So the name, that's where I got the name. That's where I found out about him, and then later on in life, here I am. So.
Did you, when you moved to Pensacola, were you already kind of thinking about maybe looking some stuff when you were here, when you were going to college, perhaps?
I went straight to college, and then when she managed to be stationed here long enough for me to finish on time, and I had my degree. We got stationed in Memphis.
Oh, okay.
And then, she went to work over there. I became the concierge at the Peabody Hotel, and then I left there and went to a convention center, which is promoting the city to the world.
In Memphis?
In Memphis. Because Memphis has a lot of tourism.
Right.
They all want to see Elvis's house, they all, all this stuff. They all want to see where Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of history in Memphis, that's for sure. And so you spent some time there?
I spent about, I think it was 3 or 4 years there. Then we got stationed in Washington, D.C. And then from there we went to Key West, Florida.
Okay.
And then from there we went back up here. And this is where she retired, so this is where we're here.
That's cool. So a few steps in between, and then you come right back to Pensacola. So...
it's not my choice.
Right, right.
If I could have my choice, I'd be back in Memphis. So.
But I guess here you get to work in this place and...
Well, I mean, it just... Life is strange, sometimes it comes back around, sometimes it doesn't. But sometimes you'll go off and then it'll come back around. So, and I've been doing this all my life. My dad was in the Air Force. We lived in Texas, California, Maryland, Madrid, Wiesbaden, Germany. So we were used to traveling. I was in California also, and Texas, and we've been used to traveling. I actually went through withdrawal like 3 years after I got here because it was time to move. I was in the mood to pack everything up. Yeah. And me and my wife got the system down to where we could pack everything up in one day and unpack everything up one day. That means putting pictures up and everything. We had a whole system.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, I did hear that's a job in itself, just figuring that sort of thing out.
Yeah, we're just going to different places all the time, and you have to restart again and make new friends and all that stuff.
But so, like in this, years that you've been back here in Pensacola, like when did you?
I've been here for 20 years now.
Oh, okay.
So
have you seen this from being like the old house, and did you hear about it?
I never heard about it until I got the job here. I went through Escarosa, that's a county-run government job finding place. So you go there and you fill out your applications and stuff, and they help you find jobs. And this is where I ended up. I actually had retired. I was a newspaper reporter here and in Key West and all that. So my newspaper was bought out, and they closed it down. So I decided to retire, and then I had some issues, so I came back here, started working again.
Okay. How long has it been since you started?
It's only been a short while. I think I've been here a month or so, maybe 2 months.
Oh, okay. So we're catching it towards the beginning.
Right. So when I got here, I read his biography, and I already knew about him in some sense. I went to the museum, read everything in there. They've got tons of history in here that they don't even know about because there's so much of it, and you have to go through the whole pile to find stuff. But I find it very interesting. I like jets. He was a jet pilot, and that airplane in particular, the F-4, is something that you know, it's a beast. And we used to control them, and you could see them 5 miles away because they always had this black exhaust coming out of that.
Wow.
And we called them pigs in the tower. I mean, when we were controlling them, because they were just, it looks like a little brute to me, you know.
So they weren't. They're not easy to conceal.
No, and that's bad when you're flying around trying to shoot somebody else, like he did, you know. So I came here and learned about him, which is I'm curious anyway about everything, and found the job here, and then we went. I actually wrote a story about his the bridge when they were going to name him, and I went to the county meeting and did a story on it. So I was familiar with that, and now it started rolling.
I was gonna ask, is that the plane?
That's the F-4.
Yeah, it looks fast.
When you get close to it, it's just like it becomes bigger.
Oh wow.
And I went down when I was a controller. I wanted to see why, or learn the job of the guys that go up to the airplane and plug them in and all that. So one day I spent one day with him, and an F-4 was there, and he told me to go underneath the F-4 while it's running and do something with a panel. And we went under there, and it was just like loud. And then I opened a panel that, you know, I needed, and I did something inside, and then it went like with vacuum. And I'm lucky I didn't have my hands in there, but it's a big airplane.
Yeah, sounds pretty daunting.
Yes. It's very intimidating, I thought. Now, a lot of people still look at it as one of the best fighters that they ever had.
So how's you say you've got to be exposed to more things here at the museum. Are there anything in particular that you looked at and you're like, wow, this is...
I like the steps.
The steps?
Yeah, and I like it because that was the beginning. You know, he went from those steps to a 4-star general, and he was a black man in this country, and that's a hard thing to do. And I also got the feeling, I got more respect for him because of, I found out about his life and what he did and the struggles that he had. And he always talks about fighting, you know, in Vietnam and World War II and Korea. Plus, he fought his own battle, internal battle with segregation, discrimination, all that stuff. And that's the stuff that really interested me now. The school, his mother's very interesting. The way she taught. I've talked to people here that actually attended the school, and that's incredible, I thought. But she was very strict, and it was just old school, you know.
Thou shalt never quit.
Correct, and that's something that I liked also. And he does a interview with Tony Brown, and it was done in '74 or something like that. And he talks about how a bachelor's degree now is equivalent to a high school degree. So he's encouraging people to be ready for their opportunity. So when their opportunity knocks on the door, he says, have your bags with you. That means be prepared, have everything ready for you. Don't quit. And then if the door opens, then you take it. And then from there you move on. So he's encouraging people to continue going to school and all that. So I think he got that from his mother.
So that teaching philosophy is really important. Just to even persevere through life, essentially, is what he says.
And especially his life. I mean, the stuff that happened to him. And did you go through the museum?
You know, I did a little bit. I try to read as much as I can, but you definitely know more. So there was a period of time when the Tuskegee Airmen at that time were all segregated, but
the airmen themselves were stationed. They went from training to a base in Indiana that doesn't exist anymore. And at that point, they decided that they wanted to be equals, and they wanted to go to the officers' club where the white people went. And they told him no, and they went anyway. So some altercations happened. He came out, and they took they found several of them, and they took them to court-martial for doing that. And that's something that, you're a black man, you finally get into the school, you learn how to fly, you do all this stuff, and then you can't go to the same club. So that's the kind of life that he had to fight.
And so how do you, yeah, I mean, that's obviously like a really clear example, of like then.
Yeah, I see him now as not as a fighter pilot or a general. I see him more as somebody that did a lot for himself and got out of the segregation and the discrimination. Even though that was all over him, he learned what his mother taught him was, don't ever quit and be ready when you get an opportunity. So,
would you say that's something that, that kind of commitment, that kind of resolve, even in, I mean, I was saying earlier, people call them restrictions, but that's like, doesn't even begin to clear. I mean, these are real barriers that they don't get down. So it's like, would you think that kind of approach should still be committed to what he did? Would you say it's something that's like part of his example, even to the kids?
Oh, sure.
People that come through here, the Flight Academy.
We had an event on Saturday here, and I think there was three adults that came back, and they got inspired by the Flight Academy, the opportunity for them to go in there and do that, and actually learn a little bit about aviation. Two of them went into aviation, the other one became a lawyer, but they all came back and talked to the kids that were in the class. So, I mean, there's a lot of stories like that, I think. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that don't know about the museum. I take lifts to work, and even, every race that the drivers are, they come here and they say, "What's this?" So we need to do some more publishing, or we need to get the word out there for people, even here in Pensacola.
What are things about the museum that you especially would like people to know about?
His mother and him as a person, rather than just the pilot and being a general. I mean, he did a lot in while he was alive, and I look at his death as tragic because he had just retired. And then I think it was 2 or 3 weeks later he died.
Wow.
His whole life was spent fighting for something. When he finally gets to the pinnacle, it's over. So.
Yeah, but it's the usual words, the example will live on, et cetera, et cetera. But here, I guess you have a really good opportunity in that people can see it very clearly. I thought the way it's shown, it's very interactive, especially I imagine a lot of the kids that come through, they
look at that.
Yeah.
And they notice that, especially the boards on the wall. And the original house was all like that. There wasn't paint on it and stuff. There was
just boards.
Just boards, and that's how they lived.
I guess, let's see, in the one of the last few questions I have in mind would be, you study communications and obviously seeing newspapers pretty up close. What are ways do you think that this kind of space can be featured in like local media?
I think there's a lot of opportunity for that, both in print and video and all that stuff. It's just the fact that we're not getting the word out, and the people that come here to tour the museum know about Chappie James. They've all read about him and stuff. That's what I find. The majority of them have come here, and they already know about him. They just want to see the stuff that's here.
Well, hopefully with the, maybe the bridge, people at least, they'll read a name or there's a statue. So,
Well, there's a lot of people that are going to see it once it's up.
yeah.
Because it's a very busy intersection.
Do you know the timeline on it by any chance?
No, I don't.
Not at all.
They just got the airplane that they're going to put up was just delivered to the Naval Aviation Museum.
Okay.
And they're going to refurbish it and paint it just like that, which is what he flew when he was in Vietnam.
Wow. Yeah, it's definitely, folks would say, no many four-star generals anywhere.
Right.
So the fact that they got one in Pensacola.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I don't know if it's talent or what it is about Pensacola, but there's a lot of people that have done stuff like that. There's a lot of athletes that come out of here and go pro. Do you know who Emmitt Smith is?
I think I might have heard of him.
He's a running back. He's got the most yards in the NFL for running back, and he grew up here. Gatlin is a sprinter, Olympic sprinter.
Oh,
he came
yeah.
from here. Roy Jones, the boxer, came from here. Derek Brooks, who's a linebacker for the NFL, came from here. And what's cool about it is they all come back to give.
Pensacola. Right?
Pensacola.
That's what I heard from Roy Jones.
Yep.
He's quite I follow him a bit. I'm a boxing fan. It's pretty cool to even see how someone like him, is so well-spoken. He does such great post-fight interviews. And not even the post-fight commentary sometimes where people are like, that's just extemporaneous speaking,
Right.
and he's just goes
just flowing
on.
with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he just speaks to like the character of the city where people are, like him, obviously the people would say like, oh, it's almost like you're a pilot of any kind. People would just always like pin that on you because of the speed and everything. But then it's good to know that he was like a good human being that cared for people and wanted to take down these barriers for others.
Well, from my opinion, I think he wanted to take down the barriers, and he wanted to help other people take their own barriers down. And that's why he always stressed, the interviews that I've seen, he always stresses something. He always stresses the 13th commandment, which is thou shalt not quit. And then he interjects that with, doing your best when the opportunity presents itself. And education.
So it's like almost like helping people help themselves in some ways. Yeah. Well, this has been really powerful, really enlightening. I'm wondering, usually towards the end of the interviews, we like to leave space if there's anything I've missed or anything else that you like to share, anything for the future here. If you're looking forward to perhaps the next space, that seems to be pretty exciting.
But it seems to be growing. I think if the museum was known more, it would continue to keep growing. There's more reading here than a real museum, I guess, and so you have to take your time when you go through to read to find out everything that happened here or that happened with him. Did you see the Black Panther thing?
I don't think I did.
Okay, when his flight helmet had a big Black Panther on it. And so when we tell people about it, that you think Black Panther was a group in the '60s that was around, but he did that himself before they were around. But they called him the Black Panther. So
yeah, he's got the
and he had the helmet, all that stuff.
Part of the deal, I guess.
Yeah. And he was good sized. His brother played football for Florida A&M and was real good at it. And then they called him Chappie, I think, and then they started calling Daniel Chappie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite interesting.
One of the most moving things for me was when I was reading his biography. He has a son named Spud, who's still alive. I think he's the only one that's still alive. And he named him Spud because when he was in Vietnam, there was a guy from Texas, a pilot, named Spud. That's what they called him. But he was the only one that treated him as a friend, just as a normal person. No barrier with a race or anything else.
Right.
But that was important to me.
To know it, yeah.
Right.
Do you happen to do you think that maybe there's people at the pilot academy that come through and they weren't as familiar with him, and then as kids are like, oh hey, like we're gonna learn about him now? Because I know you said before that folks who come through the museum, they kind of already know about him.
Yeah.
But do you think maybe that's like one avenue for people to learn more about
Sure.
the museum itself?
Yeah. I think if you come here and you take your time and read the stuff, you'll learn a lot more about him. There was a lot more to him than being a 4-star general, which is fantastic. I mean, that's something that very few people reach.
It's almost as it gets, right? There's maybe the one person that's in charge of the entire Air Force. Is that such a role?
There is, but he was close to that. I mean, he was in charge of NORAD, which is the nuclear missiles and all that stuff to protect the country.
Wow.
So, I mean, he had some important stuff going on.
Well, you're probably like in the main council of the main generals. I imagine there's some kind of like high tier sort of.
That's how they interact, and that's how they, succeed, I guess. They were, I don't know if this is true or not, but that gentleman out there named McDuffie, I don't know if you met him, but he gives the tours, and he gives really good tours because he was here when all this was happening. And one of the things that he says is that he was in line, or they were grooming James to become the first vice president candidate.
Right.
And then he died, so. And I think they did that. If you look at his career towards the end, he was getting help from somebody to move up there. He got 1 star for the many years that he was in, and then he got the other 3 within 2 years. So somebody was was helping him. So
I guess must also speak to like his level of commitment to his service. He knew what he was doing, obviously. And
yeah, he's got stuff in there that he wrote. They have quotes in there, and he said, this is my country. I love it. I'll defend it. And even though with all the stuff that was going on with him and his family, and with racism and what he went through at Tuskegee and all that stuff, he was an American. So
definitely, led by example.
Correct.
All right. Well, anything else you'd like to add?
I'm good.
All right. Well, this has been great. So thank you so much.
Thank you.